All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Lee Lowry, and I'm the Executive Director of the American School Health Association. And we're pleased to present today's webinar, Teaching Consent Through Modeling and Skill Building. Before we get started, I'd like to share a little bit about the American School Health Association. Otherwise known as ASHA, we are the only organization that addresses multiple disciplines in school health and that is devoted solely to school health. Our membership of approximately 800 individuals represents school health as administrators at the local, state, and national levels, as health and education professionals in a pre-K through 12 school setting, and as academics who conduct research that informs school health professionals. We're also the proud publishers of the Journal of School Health, a premier journal in the area of school and adolescent health. Members of ASHA can elect to receive a hard copy or electronic copy of the journal. Our membership fee is inexpensive and provides you access to the journal and also to our bi-weekly e-newsletter, School Health Action, as well as free continuing education hours through approved webinars like today and through CE qualifying JOSH articles. If you haven't already, please consider joining, volunteering, and becoming a member of the ASHA community. Visit us at ashaweb.org to learn more. If you missed our 2015 conference, consider joining us for our 2016 conference, which will be held between October 6th through the 8th in Baltimore, Maryland, and meet, share, and inspire ideas and conversation with like-minded school health professionals. We offer the following 4 tracks during the conference: Administration, Coordination, and Leadership, Programs and Services, Research and Emerging Issues, and Teaching and Learning. And please note, if you're interested in submitting a session proposal, our call for papers is now open, and it's scheduled to close March 21st. However, we're monitoring that deadline, and we may extend it. As I mentioned, the continuing education credit for today's webinar is free for all members. If you're a non-member and you'd like to receive CE credit for this webinar, we require a payment of $30. After the webinar, you can receive 1 Category 1 CECH for MCHES and CHES, 1 contact hour for continuing nursing education, or a certificate of attendance based on 70% or more participation today. Participation is measured by the amount of time the webinar remains active on your screen. We'll provide details for obtaining CE in a post-webinar email that will go out this week. Before you meet today's speaker, I'd like to share a little bit about a framework that unites ASHA's very diverse membership. ASHA believes that schools have a responsibility to meet the needs of the whole child. The whole school, whole community, whole child model, developed jointly by the CDC and ASCD, provides a framework for the health and education sectors at the state and local levels to work together towards stronger alignment, integration, and collaboration. This approach puts the student in the center. The goal is to ensure that all students are safe, healthy, engaged, supported, and challenged. This holistic and synergistic approach requires schools, students, families, and community partners to focus on improving both health and educational outcomes, and to create schools that nurture and support all students. It is a team effort, and collaboration is the key to success. Okay, a couple of notes before we begin. Your phones will remain muted for the 60-minute duration of this webinar. If you have any questions, please type them in the questions box on your screen, and we will try to address them at the end of the presentation. Also, due to the format of today's content, we will be showing several different videos during the webinar. The quality of the viewing experience may be compromised due to viewing them over the webinar platform. You will likely experience a delay in the videos, but we encourage you to focus on the audio. We're going to send you the links to these videos after today, so you'll be able to view them better. But we're going to run a poll after the first video to determine what the majority of the audience preference is for continuing to watch the remainder of the video. So we'll gauge how it's going, and we'll calibrate our presentation for your response. Excuse me. We are recording today's session, and we will send you a link to the recording links, as I mentioned, to the videos, but also to the webinar, and a link to the evaluation survey within the next couple of days. Okay, so let's get started with today's session. We're delighted to have Julia Bennett with us today, and here's a little bit about Julia. Julia is the Manager of Education and Publications at Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Her expertise is in sexual and reproductive health, educational content, and messaging, both in print and online. She received her master's in public health with a certificate in sexuality and health from Columbia University. Thank you, Julia, for joining us today for teaching consent through modeling and skill building. I'm going to turn it over to you in just a moment as I work to give you the computer screen.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today to talk about some new tools that we have. Let me just get my slides up. All right, so can everyone see my screen? We can see it?
I can see it, yes.
Okay, great. I'm gonna move this out of the way. Okay. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm here to talk today about some new tools developed by Planned Parenthood to help you teach about consent through modeling and skill building. So that's the video pieces that we'll hopefully be able to show a lot of them later. Ooh. And my slides aren't moving. Let's see. Okay. There we go. So just to do a little bit of a primer on Planned Parenthood, just to level set who we are and what we do. We're most known, of course, for being a healthcare provider. We do a wide range of sexual and reproductive health services, most of which are providing birth control and STD tests and treatments, but of course we do a wide range of services, everything from cancer screenings to abortion, pregnancy testing, and pregnancy options counseling. So we do a wide range of health services, but we also do a huge amount of education. We actually reach about 1.5 million people through our education programs every single year, and we reach a pretty diverse group of folks as well. So the majority of the people that we reach through sex education are in middle and high school. We also do some elementary school and some young adult and college programs, and then we also have a small population of adults that we reach, which is mostly reaching parents. Do a lot of parent workshops to help parents talk to their children and be primary sexuality educators for their children. And we do see diverse race and ethnicity groups for our programs as well. The majority of the people we're reaching with our education programs are people of color. So we really do a lot of in-person sex education in community settings, in school settings, and this is all done by our Planned Parenthood affiliate programs who are out in the community doing this work. We also do a lot of digital work. So I'm here from Planned Parenthood Federation of America, which is the national headquarters of Planned Parenthood. So we're not actually doing this in-person education that all the folks at our affiliates are really doing out in the field. So the majority of what we do at the national offices provide educational resources that our affiliates and our partners and everyone else out in the world doing sexual health education can use. So a couple of little plugs for some of our other digital work. So you can see the top right arrow, we have a range of social media properties. We have a lot of advocacy properties too, but we have a range of health information focused social media properties, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, YouTube, Instagram, where we post health information and great content that anyone can share and use. We also have just the website itself, which has pretty much an encyclopedia filled with sexual and reproductive health information that anyone might need and is easily accessible. And then we also have a couple of more robust educational interventions. So you can see towards the bottom, the green button, our chat. We have a national live chat and text service where young people can chat in and talk to someone live on the other end and get immediate answers to any urgent sexual health questions. So this is really targeted towards the young person who, their condom just broke and they don't know what to do, or they think they need emergency contraception and they don't know where to get it or what kind, or they're worried they're pregnant and they don't know what to do. So all these sort of immediate health concerns. This is a program that we run. It's not 24/7, but it's a lot of hours during the day, and this is free and available to anyone, so you can let all the folks you reach know about this service for urgent sexual health needs. And then more recently, we've started going into this world of interactive online experiences that are really based in public health theory and help change behavior of young people. So this bottom right corner is one example of that. It's called the kickback. So we have a range of digital education tools, we call them, for middle schoolers and high schoolers around sexual and reproductive health. So the kickback is one where you're in a party situation, you see a bunch of videos, and it's kind of a choose your own adventure of handling a variety of peer pressure experiences where young people can practice assertive communication, they can choose what they would say to someone and then see how that actually plays out. And we have a whole bunch of tools like this, so I really encourage you to check out all the resources we have on the website. We have a bunch of other tools, and then we have some lesson plans for these tools as well. And I'm going to show you later in the webinar where you can find all of our digital education tools and the lesson plans that go along with them, because they can all be useful in the classroom. So this is sort of the range of pieces that we have in the digital space at Planned Parenthood Education. And we do all this because we know that teens are online. They are on computers, they are on smartphones. There's been a lot of research done about what teens are using, and actually we're finding more and more that teens, especially low SES teens, are actually more likely than anything to be on a smartphone because they're less likely to have access to a desktop. And they're more likely to, I'm sure you guys have already started seeing this too, seeing young people start doing their homework on a smartphone. They're really, really attached to their phones, and that tends to be the place where young people are finding information and really accessing the internet is on a smartphone. And they're online all the time, right? I don't think this is a surprise to anyone either, that young people are spending a large amount of time, especially younger teens, ages 13 to 17, as you can see here. They're on it several times a day, almost constantly. They're on their phones. And one of the places that they spend a lot of time more and more is on YouTube. So YouTube is interesting because you can think of it as both a social media platform, which it certainly is. There's commenting, people share things, a lot of things go viral from YouTube, but it's also serving as a search function. So this is one of the interesting things about YouTube that a lot of other social medias like Facebook and Twitter aren't really holding on to, this really interesting search piece. And I'm sure a lot of you have used YouTube as a search engine as well. You look for how to do something, how to cook something, how to do whatever you want to find out how to do, like how to fix your toilet. You can find anything on YouTube of step-by-step instructions on how to do any kind of skill you can imagine. And the vast majority of people are starting to use YouTube as a search function. It's actually the second most commonly used search function after Google, and it's the second most popular social media site after Facebook. So people are on YouTube, and they're looking on YouTube for both information, social virility, and then how to do things. So we decided that it was time for us to sort of step up our YouTube game a little bit, especially around the skills piece, right? So if people are searching on YouTube for how to do something, why don't we put some really great videos up that show people how to do something? So we really wanted to start stepping into that space a little bit more. And so we chose to do that around the issue of consent. So why do we do this around consent? So part of this was because I'm sure a lot of you have noticed this as well, a lot of discourse in the media around sexual assault and increasingly consent. It's sort of a hot issue. People are really latching onto it and really looking for resources and tools and things that they can do around consent when it really hasn't been talked about. I mean, if you Googled consent or consent education 10 years ago, nothing would come up. Even 5 years ago, very little kind of would come up, and now it is all over the place. So there's attention for this right now, which is great. And there's a lot of confusion around this too. People are really confused around what constitutes sexual assault, what constitutes consent. This data that you're seeing on this slide it comes from a poll that came out last summer from the Washington Post and Kaiser. It's a really great survey. I encourage you to check it out. And the gist of what they found, and this was of college age, so I'll preface with that. The gist of what they found is that there's a lot of different ideas about what does and does not count as consent. So you can see on this slide, I'll show a couple more, that there's not a whole lot of consensus. So some people think that sexual activity when both people have not given clear agreement to sexual assault, and a lot of people don't, and there's some people in the middle. Here's a couple more. So you can see a lot of this, like the line is very much down the middle where some people think it is consent, some people think it isn't consent. There's a little bit of difference by gender, but even when you break it down by gender, there's still just really generally no consensus around what is and is not consent. It can get really confusing. So it felt really relevant to talk through what consent actually looks like and is, because there's so much confusion around it. A lot of the press, a lot of the media and discourse is very much focused on sexual assault and how it's a problem and how we need to stop it and how we need to adjudicate perpetrators better and how we need to teach people that they need to have consent. And that's all well and good, but we're really not going far enough if we're not showing folks what consent actually means, what it looks like in real life, and how to actually do it in real life and practice instead of just saying you need to get consent. So a lot of the work that has been done historically around sexual violence prevention, I actually, before I was at Planned Parenthood in another life, was doing sexual violence work. So, you know, 5-10 years ago in sexual violence work, there was a lot of focus on dating abuse and dating violence and domestic violence, which is, of course, incredibly important. And there was a lot of focus on risk reduction, how to, you know, have a buddy system or how to do self-defense or things like that. So these are really tools for people to help lower their risk of being sexually assaulted, but as we all know, sexual assault is the fault of the perpetrator, not the fault of the person who did not successfully reduce their risk. So if we really want to do primary prevention of sexual assault, we need to focus on the folks who are actually perpetrating sexual assault. And there's a lot of sort of mythology out in the common discourse around the serial perpetrator who's an evil human who, you know, we can't stop them and that's just who they are. When by and large we're finding more and more through the research that's just not true. And that there's a lot of, we're sort of setting folks up for failure by not showing them or teaching them how to ask for consent in the first place, which is really actually real primary prevention, right? If we're actually telling folks how to ask for consent, how to find out if someone wants to have sex with you in the first place before you do anything, and if we really set folks up for success like that from a young age to do that, then we're doing primary prevention. So we really wanted to address all of these things. As a primary prevention institution, we really do focus on, at Planned Parenthood, these more primary prevention pieces. We really wanted to focus it on consent education. And there's a lot of support for consent education, and a lot of folks are not getting it right now. We're going to be releasing a poll this April, so I can't get into the details today, unfortunately, but look out for it in April. We'll be releasing a poll showing basically the lack of consent education that most people have gotten in this country and the huge support there is for there to be some. So we know that there's support for this as well. So more folks want this education, right? So we really wanted to meet this need. We wanted to meet this need in a place that made sense. And since we're teaching folks how to do a skill, we want folks to be able to access how to do that skill. We put it on YouTube. So I think I just talked through this. So the last piece that I want to address before I try and show these videos is to talk about the evidence. So I sort of touched on these: risk reduction versus primary prevention, consent as violence prevention, and then the evidence informed. So most of the work, the digital education tools that we do, are very, very heavily evidence-based. This one I think would be more accurate to call it evidence-informed. Unfortunately, the truth is, in the sexual violence world, there is now starting to be a lot more research on sexual assault prevention, really primary prevention programs, but there hasn't historically been a lot of research or support or funding around this, so this is a pretty new field. There's a few evidence-based programs out there. I'm not sure if anyone's using them, but things like Safe Dates or Bringing in the Bystander. There's a couple of programs, but there's not a whole lot. You know, I'm coming from Planned Parenthood, where we do teen pregnancy prevention, and there's a whole lot of evidence around those things. Tons of programs to choose from for a wide range of audiences. Around sexual assault prevention, not so much. So there's not a whole lot of evidence, but hopefully with the White House initiative and more attention being paid to it and more money going into it, we'll start to have more programs that are evidence-based, but there's not a whole lot right now. But what we do know is a whole lot about what gets people to do certain behaviors. So this model is the model that we tend to use for all of our educational programming at the Planned Parenthood National Office, because it really takes into account a whole lot of different theories from public health and behavior change, and it sort of mashes them all into one thing. So you have all the determinants to choose from. I'm not going to talk through all of this in depth because it would take me an hour, but what I will say is to just draw your eye to the couple of pieces that we really focused on for these videos. So the general structure of this model is that if you start from all the way on the right, so the behavior, right? This is a behavior that we want them to do. In this case, we want them to ask for consent. The behavioral intention needs to happen before the behavior. So someone needs to decide to do something before they can do that thing. So a lot of the things that we think about in education are these pieces, things that help facilitate intention to behavior. They need knowledge, they need skills, they need the environmental facilitation to actually be able to do it. It needs to be important to them, and it needs to become part of their sort of automatic processes. It's just the more you do something, the more likely you are to do that thing again. So these are all things that happen after someone already intends to do something. They're incredibly important, but there's also this whole set of other things on the left, these distal determinants, that influence whether or not someone intends to do something in the first place. So it's really important that we're not ignoring these other pieces that really play a huge part in people's decision to do something or not. So these are things like social norms. I'm sure everyone knows what those are. Affect and emotions, how you feel about doing the thing. Your self-efficacy, so your confidence in your ability to be able to do that thing. And some of these other lesser-known ones like behavioral beliefs, which means just that you believe that by doing the thing, it will have an outcome that is good. So you believe, for example, that if you ask for consent, the person might very well say yes, versus being so sure that if you ask in the first place, well, they're just going to say no, and I don't want to hear no. So, and then the last one is self-concept and social image. So, so this is basically how you feel about yourself. Am I the kind of person that asks for consent? Is a cool person ask for consent? Am I that cool? Or am I the kind of person who's like really thoughtful and wants to please my partner? So I'm going to ask for consent. So these sort of ideas about who I am as a person and whether this behavior fits in with that. So when it comes to consent, we need all of these things, right? We need people to believe that if they ask for consent, it will lead to a good thing for them. We want people to believe that it's normal to ask for consent and that everyone asks for consent. And when you don't ask for consent, that you're falling outside of the norm. We want people to believe that, people like them ask for consent, that it fits in line with people like them and who they are. We want people to have positive emotions around consent, that it's a fun thing to do, that it's not some downer that they have to pull out a contract and go through line by line of what they can and cannot do. It has to feel like a positive experience. And then they have to feel confident in their ability to come up with the words to say it in the first place. So these videos really do try and address all these pieces. And then they try and address some of the other pieces as well that I talked about earlier. So this sort of, they have to have the knowledge, they have to have the skills, those kinds of things. It doesn't really address environmental constraints so much because we're not actually out in the world doing it, but we do really try and address a lot of these determinants. So we really use this framework when we do all of our work because we know it has if they get to the place where they can intend to do the behavior, they're more likely to do it. If we incorporate all of these determinants into our work, we know that we're more likely to be having an impact on people's behavior. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to show the first video. I'm going to go to YouTube now and put this up. And hopefully it'll work for everyone. So this first, is a series of 4 videos. Each one is about 3.5 to 4 minutes long. We'll get through as many as we can get through. Hopefully you guys can hear it on your end. So this first one is an introductory video. It's called How Do You Know If Someone Wants to Have Sex With You? Very simple. It just walks through what consent is. And then the videos 2, 3, and 4 are sort of a different format than the first video, but you really have to see the intro to sort of understand the layout of it. So without further ado, I'm going to play video 1.
How do you know for sure if someone wants to have sex with you? Well, actually, there's only one way. They need to tell you. You need to have consent. But what does consent really mean? Consent means both parties are really, truly into what's going on. This means that nobody is being guilted or pressured into doing anything. Silence does not equal consent. Some people think it's not rape unless there's fighting, screaming, or someone yelling no. But that's not true. Communication doesn't always happen with words. Body language can say a lot if you pay attention. Are they leaning in or are they pulling away? Do they look happy or do they look uncomfortable? Are they kissing you back or are they just staying kind of still? You have to pay attention to all the signals. This includes body language and words. No one can read minds, so it's always good to talk about it. Asking for consent doesn't have to be awkward. Asking for consent can actually be kind of sexy.
Want to show me your bedroom?
Show me where you want me to touch you.
Do you want to help me take these clothes off?
So, let's break this consent thing way down. 1, everyone's clear about what's about to happen next, and they're happy about it. If you're making out with someone for the first time and you want to go further, check in first.
Can I take your shirt off?
Want to try something different?
2, everyone in the situation has to feel free to be able to say no without being pressured or hassled. It's not cool to pressure people into doing stuff they're obviously uncomfortable with, or make them feel bad for saying no or wanting to stop things. Being pushy or manipulative makes for some pretty bad sex. And obviously, if a person is drunk, high, passed out, or asleep, it's not okay to do sexual stuff with them. They can't consent when wasted or unconscious. So doing this is actually rape. 3, be honest about whether or not you're on birth control, have an STD, or having sex with other people. Wouldn't you want to know that? If you're going to get naked with someone, you have to have trust and honesty. 4, saying yes to sex once doesn't mean you're saying yes to it forever. It may be tough to pause in the middle of some super sweet action, but your partner has the right to stop at any time. And 5, sex is all about connections and pleasure, right? If everyone feels respected, sex will be much better for both of you. We all deserve a safe, pleasurable, and awesome sex life. The more respect you show to the other person, the more they'll trust you enough to relax and enjoy. And the more honest you are, about what you want and don't want, the better things will go. It's easy to talk about what consent means, but what does it look like in real life? How are we supposed to know for sure how far someone wants to go or if they want to get intimate at all? Check out our other videos for tips on how to do this consent thing right.
All right. So let's go ahead and do this poll. I really hope the video is working for everyone. You just have to sit for 4 minutes in silence. Okay. So we got about 75% voted. We'll keep it open for another second. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and close. Oh, more people are going. Looks like the majority of people want us to keep going. Okay, it's stagnating. I'm gonna go ahead and close it. So 88% said continue. So I'm gonna go ahead and play at least one more. We'll see how the timing is. We might be able to get through 3 or even 4 of them. So great, I'm glad these are working for you. So let's go ahead for the second video. So the second video, which you can, here I'll show you how you can click through it here, is called When You Know They're Into It. So the next 3 videos follows our 3 couples that you already saw in this first video through a couple of different situations. So when you know they're into it, this is we call it behind the scenes color green light. So we have a green light, a yellow light, and a red light video. So this first one is, what does consent look like when it's enthusiastic, sexy, everyone's super into it? What does that look like?
How do you know when someone wants to have sex? How can you tell for sure? It's as simple as a little communication.
So, we've been hanging out a lot lately.
Yeah, we have.
I think I'm starting to really like you.
Yeah? Me too.
Want to make out?
Yeah?
We've got the place to ourselves. Want to head to the bedroom?
They talked honestly with each other, found out they both wanted the same thing, and then they went for it. And I'm happy to report a great time was had by all. But communication isn't only about talking. Body language can say a lot if you're paying attention and respecting the other person's signals.
Mine too.
Want to put it on for me?
Yeah, I can do that.
You know they're into it.
Next time I'm letting you pick. Fine, okay. Do you want some water? Sure, but I think I want something else. And what could that be? I think you know. Why don't you show me? Why don't you show me more?
someone's really into it, there should be no question. But what if you think they're into it but aren't totally sure? Here's how you handle those situations. Sometimes.
All right, so just to cue this next one up, I think it's pretty obvious. So this next one is when they're kind of into it. So when there's a moment where you need to check in, there's some sort of boundary, there's some sort of, someone seems not sure or whatever it be. So there's moments where you need to sort of check in and clarify.
Sometimes you're not sure what your partner's thinking, which is why communicating is so important. But people can have a hard time speaking up when they're not comfortable. So you have to look at all the signals they're sending.
Is everything okay?
Yeah, I don't know.
Am I taking things too fast? We can go back to the party if you want.
I think I'm just not ready for all that. But I like you, and I like kissing you.
I like kissing you too. And I'll keep my hands up here.
Agreeing to some sexy stuff doesn't mean you agree to all sexy stuff. So, even if someone's obviously into you and things start to get hot and heavy, make sure you check in first if they start looking like they've left their comfort zone.
No, I don't like condoms. You just pull out instead. Well, I can't be with someone without using condoms. I'd be too stressed out to enjoy sex.
Just never wear them. I hate the way they feel.
Well, that's gonna be a problem. I'm not really down with taking chances like that.
Wow, okay.
Look, I'm trying to protect both of us. Okay, I care about you. And if you wear a condom, it'll make me feel good, so I can focus on making you feel good.
Okay. I'm into that.
And sometimes the timing is not right, or your partner is just not in the mood. But that does not mean they're not into you.
Come on, let's take a break.
Babe, I have to do well on this test tomorrow.
It'll only take a few minutes.
I have to focus. Give me like 20 more minutes and then I can take a break. Besides, I want to be able to give you all my attention.
I guess I can wait. You let me know when you're ready for me.
Thanks, babe.
Consent's all about watching, listening, and asking, and being honest with ourselves about what the other person is trying to communicate. But the truth is, not everyone wants to get it on with us whenever we want to. And if they're just not into it, here's how to deal without causing drama or hurting anybody. Even though it may not seem like it, it happens to everyone. It turns out that our crush doesn't like us back, or our partner has different limits than we do. There's no way around it. Dealing with rejection or sexual frustration can be hard, but it's super important to handle these situations with respect. Once you know a person isn't cool with what you're asking, stop asking. Nobody likes to be pushed to doing something they don't want to do, and pressure can really ruin a relationship. It's important not to make the other person feel bad for saying no either.
So what should we do now? I should probably get to bed. I kind of have a big day tomorrow. Yeah, I'm tired too. It's late.
You could stay here if you wanted.
I should probably go home.
Okay. Do you want me to call you a cab?
No, I'll just walk.
Thanks for coming over. Yeah. Text me when you get home.
Yeah. I'll see you in class.
Not getting what you want sucks, but that's life. No one owes you time, attention, or sex. So the best way to handle rejection is just be cool about it. That way you'll save face and no one gets hurt. What about those situations when someone really isn't all there?
Are you okay?
You seem pretty wasted. You need to take a nap?
If your date is drunk, they can't really make active choices, so it's not consent.
Okay, you're out of it. You need to sleep this off. I'm going to put you to bed and I'll text you tomorrow.
All this consent stuff really isn't that complicated. Just pay attention to your partner's feelings and respect their limits. No pressure, no drama, no problem. Check out our other videos on how to talk the talk when it comes to sex.
Okay. So I want to make sure we leave time for questions at the end. So the last piece that I wanted to go through is what you can actually do with these videos in the classroom, which is equally important. So instead of going back to my slides, I'm going to actually show you where you can find the lesson plans that we developed to supplement these videos. I'll just sort of quickly show you. We'll give you the links as well, but just so you know how to navigate our page a little bit. So I'm on PlannedParenthood.org. Go to Tools for Educators. We have a whole section of our website of Tools for Educators, which I encourage you all to check out. Under Resources, and then all of our digital tools. So on this page, and I can, like I said, all the links will get around, you can see all the digital tools, so the consent videos, as well as, if you keep going, all these other tools that I talked about earlier that we created. There's lesson plans for these too. They're all on this page. But today we're going to look at the consent videos. So we have 2 lesson plans that we developed that use these videos in the lesson plan. So you could do them separately. You could potentially sort of elongate it into one big long piece if you have more than an hour to talk about this stuff, which would be great. But they take 2 different lenses on this. So I'm going to do a quick walkthrough. Of course, about 15 minutes of each of these lesson plans is actually watching the videos. So this lesson plan on consent, really it starts with defining what consent is. You let folks brainstorm what they think of when they think of consent and come up with their own group definition of consent. Then they watch the first video. They compare the 2 and really talk through these 5 tenets of consent that our narrator talks through in the video. These really, really key pieces to make sure everyone is on the same page about what consent is and isn't. So then it goes through each of the other videos and does a little bit of processing after you watch each video of what are the words people use, what phrases did they use to ask, what phrases did people use to signal consent or lack thereof, and you know, what are sort of the things that they noticed about it, what could they actually use in their lives. So that starts with the enthusiastic yes video, then we jump to the definitive no video, since these are the two more concrete pieces. And then, of course, the more complex one is when you're not really sure. This is, of course, the hardest part. When should I stop and check in? How do I know when to do that? So these are some of the, you know, it allows folks to process what are the moments that happen in these videos that could signal that maybe someone's not totally comfortable, and then what could you ask? So he uses the videos as modeling so that folks can really pick apart, you know, what are the things that they said, what were the responses, what body language did they have that signaled something to you, so they can really start to identify when consent is and is not present. And then it ends with a more practice for them where they can come up with their own language for how they would ask for consent. So there's some role plays in here. I won't go through all the details of them now, but there's a variety of role plays that address some scenarios that we didn't address in the videos, and I'm sure this will come up in questions. Of course, we could not address every single scenario, potential scenario in the video, so we pull out some more so that they can get some practice in some of these other, and they really are all gray area. You know, the person did not say no, and now you have to say okay. It's a lot more gray than that. So they can really sort of get used to stopping, asking these questions, and hearing answers. So this is the consent lesson plan that goes along with the videos, and of course there's a whole bunch of processing questions at the end. So that's the gist of the first one. The other video, the other lesson plan is on media literacy. So this one, it also shows all the videos, and it also starts with a group definition of consent, but it takes a different lens for the rest of it. So it starts with having folks write down scenes from TV or movies or music videos or whatever media they want that had a sexual situation and what happened in it. Did people say anything? What did they say if they did? What were the cuts? When did it end? How do you know what happened? So it has them analyze a sexual situation that's relevant to their lives in the media, and then in small groups it has them sort of discuss what are the things that did and did not take place during that scene. And then from there it jumps to our videos. So it gives them a chance to sort of recognize what they're seeing in the media, and then look at a different model that is a lot more clear, that shows all this communication. So then it kind of goes through a lot of the same steps that the other lesson plan goes through, you know, showing the yes video and what are some of the words people used, but then it has this other lens of how is this different than what you normally see. So it's getting them to critically reflect back on what our videos look like compared to what they're normally being shown out in the world. So it does that for the yes, it does that for the no, and then it does that for the unclear, you're not sure they're into it video. And then it has a little hint. This is, you know, I by no means want to call this a bystander intervention, but it has a little hint of bystander to it. Because the truth about bystander intervention is that it's not just about getting someone to intervene right before an assault happens. It's actually a whole lot about combating rape culture and getting folks to feel comfortable calling each other out on the little microaggressions that can, through time and communities, lead up to violence. So it sort of sets folks up to think through what they could say to whoever they're with if and when they see these bad examples out in the world. So next time they see some, you know, rom-com where no one says a word and everyone knows exactly what everyone wants and it was amazing sex for everyone even though no one said anything, and it just like cut to black. What, you know, what do you say? What can you say to your friend in that moment and get them to really think through and set an intention? So you'll see at the end there's these intention setting sheets where they actually set an intention, where they write down what they could or would say in those scenarios so that they feel more prepared to actually do that and to start calling out these really, really bad examples that we see out in the world. So let me just go back to my slide. So these are the two lesson plans. Like I said, well, the links will go out so you can have access to all of these things and all of these links. I'll make sure that you have all the resources that you need. So with that, at 4:50 on the dot, I will stop, and I know that we wanted to leave time for questions, so I'm happy to talk through anything any of you guys want.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Julia. This has been really great, and I think that the video quality was enough, was bearable enough. I know it wasn't perfect for our audience, but we'll be able to share them after the presentation ends. I want to, at this time, encourage people to go ahead and submit questions. At this time, I only have 2. Oh, looks like I have a 3rd. So while we're talking here, please, we're still accepting questions, and we're happy to use this last 9 minutes or so to address them. So go ahead and send them in. Okay, so first question is a pretty easy one, and this is something that I didn't check with you first, but will Planned Parenthood be able to approve us sending your slides to our audience?
Yeah, that should be no problem. There might be a couple of quick adjustments I need to make before I send it out, but yeah, happy to make the slides available.
Okay, wonderful. And we will be sending that post-webinar email out in the next couple of days. So if we get that from you in time, then we'll include that with all the other materials we'll be sending out to the group. Okay, the next question came in about halfway through your presentation, and the person comments that that it says silence doesn't equal consent, but then says that body language can be consent. Is body language alone enough to constitute consent, or should it be both body language and words?
That is a really good question. And the point that we are trying to make with the videos is that, you know, body language is part of this. I think a lot of this, there's a lot of discourse about, you know, yes means yes, no means no, anything else in between doesn't count and is irrelevant. And I would argue that consent is more nuanced than that. I think it is definitely possible to consent to sex. I think this is probably a lot of experience a lot of people have had in the world. It's possible to consent to sex without ever saying a word, but it's a lot harder. So, you know, I'm thinking, you know, say someone is been with their partner for a really, really long time. They know when their partner is excited about something. They know when they're not super excited about something in general in life. If it's someone you know really well and you can read them really well, sure, it's possible to have consent without a verbal yes. A lot of times when we're talking to teens, that's not necessarily part of their reality. So I think that the point to get across is that body language tells us things, and it's really important to pay attention to body language because on the one hand, you know, body language can show us that someone's excited about something, and it can also show us that they're really not excited about something. So, you know, I think that bringing body language into the conversation to get folks to think through how body language is part of consent is really, really important if we're gonna be realistic. You know, I think that it's not realistic to require, you know, a very specific conversation when it comes to consent. Ideally, yes, there's a verbal yes. It's very clear. Questions are asked and they are verbally answered. But in addition to that, body language can tell us a lot. So I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a yes and to really pay attention to what people are saying and how people are acting. So someone could, you know, kind of be like, well, yes, I guess. They don't really mean, they might not really mean yes, and if you pay attention to pulling away while they're saying, well, yeah, I guess, and I think it goes both ways. So I think it's really important to have this more nuanced conversation where we bring both body language and words into it.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think that was a good answer. Okay, the next person comments that they really like the videos. However, they seem a little steamy to be showing to high school classes, and they want to know what your thoughts are on that.
Yes, we get this question a lot. So we geared the videos towards 17 to 22-year-olds. So definitely appropriate for college, and could potentially be totally appropriate for, you know, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. That said, I understand that everyone's setting is different, and what the powers that be will let you show is different. We've had some folks just tell us right out that there's no way they can get this through their school, they cannot show it in their school, and I understand that, and that's sort of the reality that we're living in. I would say that it might be helpful to sort of pick and choose, right? You don't have to show all 4 videos. Even if you're just showing the first video, where I think the only raciness you see is some kissing, I don't think that you see anything past that. Then maybe just show the first video, or maybe just show the last video. The only one that gets really racy, I think, is the second video. That said, there's nothing in any of these videos that you couldn't see on primetime television. So I totally understand the restraints of getting approvals, but I think sort of framing it around what it's trying to teach and being flexible about showing certain pieces of the videos versus all of them can be useful.
Okay, great. I think that's good. Okay, so on a related note, do you plan to make videos and tools for any younger age groups around consent?
We don't have any plans right now. We're sort of starting to pull together some other tools on a totally unrelated issue outside of consent. I think, like I said, we have a poll coming out in April, which really does speak to the desire to have these kinds of conversations, even among middle schoolers. We're seeing a lot of support around teaching how to ask if someone wants to have sex among middle schoolers. So that, I guess that will come out. So that needs to be used as a support for this. I think that, I would argue that I don't think these videos are as racy or as controversial as a lot of people worry they will be. We've gotten, of course, some questions and concerns in a couple of schools who haven't been showing them, but I think they're not as scary to a lot of people as we expected they might be. They've gone over pretty well. But no, we don't have current plans to do anything for young people. But the other research that I could point to, and I can happy to share this, we did develop for Let's Talk Month in October, which is where we promote consent, health, communication around sex. We developed a tip sheet for parents on how to talk about consent at every age. So there's some pieces in there that might be useful around talking about respecting other people's boundaries more generally, and how that can lead into better consent practices. So I'm happy to share that as well.
Okay, great, thanks. We have just 2 minutes left, and I just want to encourage you to try to speak directly to your microphone for this last question or two. We heard you, but some of it was a little bit hard to understand.
Okay.
Okay, so the next question is, do you have any feedback or examples from teachers that might have used these videos in their classroom already?
Yeah, let me think. And we've gotten a lot of positive feedback, a lot of folks saying that they go over very, very well, that the teams really like them, that they're entertaining, but they're also educational. They really give the kind of language that they can just realistic and useful, a little bit of their corny, but for the most part, the corniness didn't seem to dissuade anyone from picking up the information. The one question that I get over and over again is addressing when both people are drunk. That is the number one sort of challenge to all of this that I've heard from educators out in the field. They get a question from students about, what if we're both drunk? Like, how can it be sexual assault, or how can anyone be held accountable for anything if they're drunk, essentially? So that's probably the number one issue that seems to come up. It was more with high school age or college age, but I do get it a lot. And that's not really addressed in the videos, because it's kind of clear from our team that there's one person who's clearly more drunk than the other person. And that makes things a lot clearer. And I think the thing that I'm learning from this is that it's so much about the nuance. There's no easy answers. There's no, this is the right way to consent. This all at all times in all situations means consent is given, and this at all times in all situations means there is no consent. It's just not how communication and humans work, right? So I think that's why this is such a hard thing for folks to teach about, because there isn't necessarily a right or a wrong answer. There's rules, to some extent, there's guidelines, there's things to pay attention to, there's tips and tricks, but there's no right or wrong answers because everyone communicates differently, right? So, you know, so I think it's just a little bit of learning how to have more nuanced lessons about a really nuanced topic. And you know, if folks take this out into the field and they do have any questions or concerns or something comes up that they want to let me know about, I would love, love, love to hear that.
Okay, wonderful. And on that note, we're going to go ahead and stop the Q&A session. And again, I want to thank you, Julia, for your time, and Planned Parenthood for sharing these videos with us. It was great. And just want to remind everyone, so we will send a post-webinar email out at some point yet this week, and we will include a link to this recording of today's video, webinar, as well as links to where all the videos can be found. And we'll also share the slides and the evaluation for today if you're pursuing continuing education credits. So thank you once again, and have a great evening. Bye-bye.